Hi, thanks for making the time. And is it Ijad? Is that how I pronounce it? What's the best way to pronounce your name?
It's Iyad.
Iyad. Got it. I got it wrong.
Hmm.
Great. Awesome. You're based in Berlin, right? Yeah.
Correct.
I have a funny anecdote because I think we've been trying to do this. I think for a bit. It's been a while. We've been trying back and forth, and I think I didn't know where your office was in Berlin, but I was meeting with some friends who have a fund in the city, and the hotel they put me up in was down the road from ReaearchGate. And so it was just serendipity. I was like, wait a minute, that looks familiar. I'm like, oh my God. So I just emailed your assistant and I was like, is there any chance he's around? And she's like, I'm so sorry, he's busy. I'm like, no worries. I knew it was going to be very unlikely, but it was just funny. It was just funny. So yeah.
Cool.
Anyway,
Yeah.
you have a really nice Japanese place around the corner from your
Oh,
office.
which one?
It's just
Uh,
literally around the corner. They only serve like it's next to the barn. There's like the barn cafe, like a small
I
one.
know, I know, I know, I know which one.
It's
Yes,
like I only
across the
know two
street.
places in Berlin. It's like that one, the cafe, and the barn, and so it's nice. But
Yeah.
Ijad, thank you for making the time. I know you're probably very busy. I wanted to sort of go back in time a little bit because you've been running ReaearchGate for a while, but I talk to a lot of researchers and PhD scientists, professors, doctors, all different kinds of people who have ideas to do something, and most of them don't take the leap. What was the initial reason or the why'd you start ReaearchGate? Like how did that come about? And I know it's going back a bit, but if you would indulge me and the listeners, like where did the idea come from and why do it? It sounds you had a pretty good career, it sounds like, based on what I can read online, and why change lanes completely and how did that come about?
Yeah. So, first of all, thanks for having me. The one thing which I realized as a scientist was that we're not sharing all the data and all the information we are creating as researchers. And looking at that problem, I was seeing this as a problem, as you would also face the problem while you're doing research, a problem you're trying to solve. And you could solve this, or you could try to solve this as a research project and think, oh, this is a potential research project, and maybe I consider to solve that by, creating a research team and try to get funding for it. Very similar to the later than startup world, but in a research environment. Um, But then I realized that the entrepreneurship is the better tool, and going and building a company is the better setup than being a researcher and try to do this in the research environment. And that was the main reason, solving a problem which I saw together with my co-founder Sören, to connect researchers in real time worldwide on problems they're all working together, and then ultimately allow them to share failed experiments and other data sets into the system. Yeah, so this was the beginning. This was in 2008, and I was still, as you said, I good career in science and in medicine. So I wanted to be an MD, uh, professional, and then becoming a professor, but decided then against that, and putting all the cards onto the table and say, okay, let me just go all in on the entrepreneurship and build this company, because I think I will have more impact in the world if I succeed with this idea.
And in the last, it's been, what is it, how many years has it been since ReaearchGate officially launched?
So officially launched, the first beta was in May 2008. So it's
Yeah,
like 15 years now.
yeah, 15 years. So it's a long time to run a startup in anyone's books, right? And I think, first of all, congratulations to making it to 15 years, right? That's exciting. And you guys clearly, I saw the numbers recently. You're sort of 25 million plus researchers on the platform, and clearly, you guys are doing well. And I think it's just about, were there, of course, you said entrepreneurship was the better tool for solving this problem. Um, Maybe turn the question a little bit, like what are the problems that science is a better tool for, and what are the problems that entrepreneurship is a better tool for? If we could just
Mhm.
explore that a little bit, because um, there's so many times, as you know much better than me, there's a lot of research done in universities or institutions which will take maybe a decade to be commercialized or more. Potentially that's a better tool, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, where is science and academia the better tool, and where is entrepreneurship the better tool?
A question I never got asked. So
Surprising because
interesting. Um, um, yeah. So if I think about it and reflect on my work and the work I see also the researchers doing on ReaearchGate, and then also experiencing entrepreneurs I work with, the boundaries have blurred over the last, I would say, decade. I think it was clearer when I was before I started ReaearchGate. These times where it was very clear if you have a commercial idea around something, then you should use entrepreneurship and don't stay too long in the academic environment, because it just influences you too strongly in the way you work, in the way you do things, in the way you bring things to market. And so if you had a commercial concept behind it, it is better if you just go faster into an entrepreneurial setup. On the other hand, if commercial is driving you too strongly, then the general idea or the concept might be polluted or destroyed too early in the process. I have seen people who became entrepreneurs and went back into academia, and the other way around. So there is nothing is better than the other. It is a mindset. It's a different mindset. On the academic, in the academic environment, and now I'm getting more to the meat. In the academic environment, you have sometimes a more basic research process where even the practical use cases are not always clear in the moment when you're doing them. But maybe in a couple of years, someone else will then use that to do something more practical with more impact. There's a lot of basic science research, which many decades later, the implications got clear and then being used for treatments or for other impactful research. In entrepreneurship, the connection between what I do and the impact I want to have is very clear. And then it needs to also be commercialized if you are a for-profit organization. And that is a little bit different than in the academic world. If you look at ReaearchGate, we didn't commercialize it for a very long time. The first investor, Matt Kohler, who was a co-founder of LinkedIn and an early employee of Facebook, the first thing he said to me when we met is like, look, if we want to do this together, I can help you where I can. And I have knowledge in building networks. I have done that before, but this is a long game. This is nothing where you come in 3 years later, you go out or you go public or you have a lot of revenue, and then this is not going to be the case. So if you are in for it for this long ride, I will be with you and I will support you where I can. And this happened in 2010, 2011. So
But
this is now.
do you know why he said that? Do you know why he saw, like, what he saw in what you were building, that it was going to be a long journey? Did you guys talk about that after?
Yeah, we did. Just his view, and I agree with his view, is the system science is not a system which is changing overnight. Things has been relatively slow in the way science has changed. If you just look at the format of a research paper or a research article, the format itself hasn't changed for hundreds of years, even though we have better tooling right now, different tools. We have the web, we have 2.0, web 3.0, we have no AI. A lot of things just stick to the original concept. These concepts were taken to the internet world, but never really changed in its fundamental. And I think that's what Matt saw and understood. Said, look, if we want to change this, we're not changing. We're changing fundamental behavior here, and that is something which takes time. And that is also something which we, in the beginning, focused heavily on. It's like building a product which researchers love, not so much which we build in order to sell something or to make money with it. And yeah, this took a very long time to build that product. So
And I
yeah,
think I
that's
think it's interesting because this is like it is really interesting to hear because, of course, the regular startup media, right? The global media talks about like X million raised, X million exit, all these numbers keep throwing around all the time, right? And I think sometimes the more interesting, the more difficult startups to build that will have a much larger impact just take a long time.
for
And
sure.
and
Absolutely.
and in your case, I think as you hinted on a little bit, you sort of went into an industry or the scientific community or the scientific industry is slow to adapt to the different innovations that have happened, the internet, etc., as you mentioned. Um, but I want to sort of spend a little bit more time on that. Why do you think that's the case? Is 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 there something? Because it's a bit of an oxymoron because the researchers and scientists are they're doing the most cutting edge work in the world in their respective fields. So you would imagine that they would want the best tools to get the best output. So
And don't forget, the World Wide Web was originally developed for science.
exactly, that's my point. Exactly, and I think that's also the interesting thing. Like, I think I one of the episodes a couple of months ago was with Professor Serge Belongi, who's a machine learning AI professor, XR leader, and he did a lot of interesting things also for a long time from Cornell and a few other places. He moved to Copenhagen now, leading the Pioneer Center here. Anyway, it's funny because he talked about working with Google, and doing different things with different big companies. And I sort of have been following the AI space for a few years now, and it's really interesting because Apple had their event recently, and um, someone posted, "Oh, it's really great to see that my paper from 2016, the technology that the researcher on Aarhus University down the road here, worked on, Apple has put in Vision Pro, right? And it's the exact technology. Like it's a paper he published, and it was, to me as an entrepreneur, I was like, oh my god, aren't you frustrated that like there's no you didn't get access? It's just not about the money necessarily, but it's also a little bit about that. But it's mostly about, isn't there a better path, and wouldn't the technology move much faster if the people who spend their life on the cutting edge could influence the commercial part more? Anyway, but that's
Yeah,
just
fair
want to hear your
point.
thoughts. Yeah.
Yes, it's a honestly, my answer is I don't know. If they would have built the Apple Vision Pro, he would have built the Apple Vision Pro.
And that's exactly what the other professor said as well. So
So it's a difference between creating a concept and thinking conceptually and then bringing it to the market and know how to bring it to market, right? And again, not one is better than the other, right? So there is this different types of interest, different type of working, different type of people, different type of behaviors. And so, nothing of what we create is something we create out of nowhere, right? Like even the ReaearchGate idea, we used Web 2.0 platforms as a proxy. We used search experiences we had in PubMed to understand, okay, what are we looking for? Are we looking for the paper, or rather looking for the people? Oh, we're looking for the people, but we can't click on the person. I want to click on the person. So I just want to say that, yes, I get it. I think one general issue I see here is that the recognition is maybe not as it could be, because these people don't want always money. Even though that should also be something we should look into in the future, how uh, successful integration of concepts which were created in the academic world potentially could lead to corporates paying something back to the academic world to fund research again, right? This is because that's the whole concept of the life cycle here. But it's the
yeah,
recognition, obviously, you want ultimately, right? So recognition, this is why you do the work. This, right? Most scientists don't make almost any money in the research they do in universities, as I did when I was a scientist. So it's not about the money; it's about the interest being at the ahead of the wave and thinking about things which no one has thought about before, and getting the recognition for it at one point. So why it hasn't changed that much? Why is it so slow? Um, it's a mix. It's a mix of science shouldn't be super fast, in my opinion. We saw in the COVID times what that means if it's super fast. Drugs came out where people publishing preprints thinking that those are good treatments, and then people took it and that came out it's harmful. So science not should always be had some like conservatism in it in terms of speed. On the other hand, systems, obviously, right? Systems influence the speed of science in the way we talk about science, right? Religions have been holding back scientific discoveries for hundreds of years and shaped our behaviors in terms of how are we publishing, what are we talking about, and it's still the case, right? It's not that every person in the world lives in a system where we can, what we have the luck to be here. And I'm in Germany. I can say whatever I want when it comes down to science, but it's not in every country like this. So system also holding back the way we systems holding back, but also shaping people how to publish and how to make information available. So, and this is why change is not so easy. But this is also how you build successful products, in my opinion. If you try not to think in tools, but in behavioral changes you're trying to achieve. And if you just like think in tooling, you could come up with, let's say, a reference management tool as an example. Yes, there have been reference management tools before. Maybe you do it a little bit better, but that's not going to change the behavior. But building a network for researchers, yes, that was hard. And especially if you start, there's no one in the network. So someone signs up and says, okay, who's here? It's empty. Why should I come back? Why should I use this thing? However, long term, this has the ability and the power to change behavior and connect researchers in a different way. And I think that is what we looked at. And this is also why it took so long. And still, I say this to my employees, we're really at the beginning of everything. It's so, Les, we're working on this now for 15 years. But we're seeing this now also, the adoption in the publishing industry, in the scientific publishing industry over the last almost a year, how fast this is happening now. This is because ReaearchGate is being accepted in that industry now, which also took time for the companies who have been long in that industry to accept a player like us.
Yeah, I saw some exciting announcements you shared on Twitter and different places on your news, on your PR side of things, that there's a lot of journals you guys are partnering with. I think I'm actually I feel very much of an imposter syndrome because I don't know much about the scientific world. I'm very new to it. I'm an entrepreneur on the tech side. See a problem, build a startup. That kind of stuff, right? Very very basic. And it was after um, exiting a company about 8 years ago. I was like, okay, I kind of felt like I'm tired of just building another app that just does something interesting, but I want to do something more. And that's when I sort of slowly found the scientific community, and I found it pretty exciting and amazing. The people that I met, it was just XYZ person has solved early Alzheimer detection and can cure early onset of XYZ disease. And I was like, oh my goodness, where have these people been my whole life? And I think it was kind of just very inspiring for me personally. And then through the process, I just sort of like you said, I ran into I'm interested in reading an article, but then very quickly I'm not associated with any university, and then there's a lot of paywalls that pop up, right? And I think it was also interesting for me that it's the scientific publishing world. It seems, of course, very closely connected to the universities, and it makes sense because that's where the publishing is done, and that's where most of the work is done. But you said it started for ReaearchGate has been around for 15 years. 14 years into your existence, things started changing a lot, as you just mentioned a year ago, more or less. Of course, before that, there was probably more things happening as well. But why do you think it's changing now, and what is the reason for it? And why are they opening up more? Or what is happening, and why is it happening now? Maybe.
It's a very, very good question. As every question, it's a very stupid thing to say. It's a very good question. I try to get rid of that stupid behavior. Um,
Well,
every question is great.
exactly.
So,
maybe,
um,
maybe, maybe the question you could say is, I haven't been asked that question that often. Maybe you should say that. You said that
it was
earlier,
the, yeah,
and
that's it. But that was even truth. Like I was like, oh my god, I never had to think about this before. Um, the there are a couple of elements which are, I think, leading to the change which we see right now. I think the one element is open access. So open access is a movement which has been quite a long time around, which is solving exactly the problem which you just mentioned, which is like access to research, access to content. That is growing very, very fast. Like last year, for the first time in history, there were more articles published in open access than in non-open access in the world. That's the number one. The number two thing is we're seeing now the publishers, scientific publishers, when we talk about publishers, scientific publishers, who have to adopt now, really, also then the business models they have, which have been built before in a non-open access world. And now they have to shift to an open access world, which is just a different business model. Before you sold to libraries as a yearly subscription, and now you are selling publishing service, more or less, to researchers who choose where to publish. So basically the money, the decision where to spend the money is then again at the researchers' power. So things are changing on the business model side of things, which I think enables or forces them to change. Funding agencies have been putting more pressure on scientists to say, look, researcher XYZ, if you are getting our money, you have to publish open access. So that also comes. The second thing, the third thing, I wouldn't also downplay the role we have played over the last decade, bringing researchers together into one network and showing that there are other ways of sharing research before you publish. So I think it's multifaceted. So again, I think this world is far away from great solutions yet. I think the science world, there's way more you can do and we will be able to do as an industry. AI is obviously changing every industry now, but even there, we will see how AI is going to change this industry. I don't think in every fast solution now, all the solutions who are coming up now are not going to be the ones who will survive long term. You have seen this also with Web 2.0 applications in the early years when you had like almost everywhere networks or platforms where you will be able to post your profile and change your interests and this and that. And at the end, almost the players who came to the game late with like a better understanding, a better market, a better entry to the market, but also a clearer concept. I think the one concept in AI and science, which is going to be key, is going to be quality. How do you ensure that the system you build has high quality inputs? If you just would throw in all the research in the world which exists right now into an AI and hope that AI will come up with conclusions, you would teach that system a lot of things which are not correct. You know, the numbers are huge. They're varying between a couple of percent to even 30% of all the research has wrong data, fraud in it. That is still something which needs to be cleaned up. And before you just feed an AI system with this. So yeah, I think we see this right now, the change. And we, again, last sentence, important things, impactful things take time. They just take time. And everyone who thinks the opposite, it's a difference between going from 0 to 1, as Peter Thiel would put it with his book. It's one important thing, but as important is it go from 1 to 100. And these things are not easier or harder than the other one. They're equally hard or equally easy, however you want to see it. And you, as a founder, have to accept very early on, like, what are you doing? What do you want to do? Is this like a fast thing or a long thing? I would be interested in looking and seeing how many products who have been built with a lot of money, sold for a lot of money, still really exists 10 years after. Like how many of those, right? You have a handful who got better through acquisition, as YouTube as an example. But how many of these, or Instagram, but how many of the mass of all these companies which are being acquired really survive and really make a difference in the new environment they have been acquired to?
Yeah, and I think I had another founder on who's been running a company for 23 years. His name is Jason Fried. He has this tool called Basecamp that, along with the prolific co-founder as well, who's coming on the podcast in a couple of weeks. But it's I'm hearing analogies between the two of you, and it was not intentional that I had both of you this week, but both people who've had a company for more than 10 plus years. And I think it's interesting also to sort of see similarities, right? If indeed longevity and, like you said, real impact is your goal, and you choose the vehicle of entrepreneurship to solve a problem for a community or a subset of society, or whatever your target audience is, then it does make sense, I think, because even if we think about it, everyone talks about the splash in the pan, right? The chat GPTs, the whatever first launches. And you're right. It is the founding teams and the early team members who can navigate that, whatever I think Paul Graham calls trough of sorrow, the different words for that sort of, as you put it, after 1 to 100, right? And not many people can do that. And maybe to ask you, because from the outside in, it is a long journey, right? 15 years, and some might say, okay, no crazy exit, no crazy number. You have raised a lot of money as well, and I'm just wondering. You also said it yourself on the call, on the chat, on the podcast right now, that you didn't monetize for a while. Maybe a couple of questions, right? The first one being, what was the hardest part in the last 15 years, if there was one or two or three you can think of? And monetization, how did you guys go about that, and how are you thinking about it now, right? Because I can imagine, as you said, you need the platform built first. But let's start with either one. You want to pick the ones? What was the hardest parts, or monetization? You choose. And how did you think about it? And because I can see that also already now in the conversation, that you and the team are quite thoughtful about how you do things, because it doesn't seem, you might wait and choose your decision. But yeah, I'd just love to hear your thoughts on why not monetize for a long time, and then why, and how are you monetizing now, and what are the plans for the future, if you want to share something.
Mm-hmm. So let's start with the hardest. I think the hardest is the constant growth. As entrepreneurs and as an entrepreneurial team, you have to put on into the mix all the time. And you have to see your own limitations, and then hire people who can fill those limitations and help you to grow again. That has been by far the toughest, because you have to deal with your own insecurities and the problems you might not know that you have them, and that will get more obvious over time if you realize, oh, I'm good in product building, I'm not so good in building a monetization strategy. So that's the one thing. And then the hardest part, I always think there is not this one founding moment a company goes through. There are multiple founding moments over time. And the one founding moment which the last one was really turning ReaearchGate from a purely founder-led, to a more professional managed enterprise, with still the founders somewhere in the mix, but not anymore on the highest managerial level. And I think that is a very tough transition, because you have to bring people in who really believe in what you do, and who have the experience to build companies and scale them. And I remember a conversation with my two co-founders, and we said, look, every day is new to us. We need to bring people in who have done it before, and who help us to make our vision a reality in the future. So that is by far, I would say, one of the hardest transitions we had to go through as a team in the last couple of years. When it comes down to the...
Before we get into that, because I think I want to just double click on that for a second. I think Thank you for sharing. First of all, we see it a lot in business news. Professionals coming in and things don't always go as smoothly. But this sounds like it was a decision from you as well, from the founding team. Um, what was you said it earlier, so I would like you to maybe explain it a bit more. But why did the founders run into their limitations enough to be like, okay, we just need to bring people in, and the transition was hard. What about it was difficult? If you think about it, what comes to mind?
So my co-founder Sören was always very, I would say, a couple of steps ahead of me. He was leading the monetization teams for some time. And then he came to me and said, Iyad, it's just getting too big. Like I'm losing control here a little bit and I need someone else to do it. And you always, I didn't take that, and honestly, I didn't take that seriously. Because my personal way of doing things is just to just learn and do harder, which is not the right way. And it took some time for me to really take him seriously. And that this is the right path. And the same on the technology leadership. Like Horst was an amazing founder, tech founder, and there are other roles within ReaearchGate he then took over. But you need someone else. Like I almost think it almost excludes that if you are a very successful tech founder from the first days, this almost excludes to 99%, there's always exceptions, I think, that you're going to be the tech person 10 years after. I just think these things, either the technology person of the early days was wrong, if that fits later. So you could have maybe had more progress in the beginning because you maybe started with the wrong tech leader, or it's the other way around. You just started with the right tech leader and you just have to swap that at one point. So I think these two things are almost excluding each other from a personality point of view. And but Horst, again, is still at ReaearchGate. And what was the tough part was they're both friends, and I saw this as breaking a friendship by bringing other people in who are managing them, and this is what I have been reading, and also Matt said to me, this usually can destroy companies, these things. But again, my co-founders were, I would say, more mature than I was, and made it easy for me to make this transition for the whole organization, which was desperately needed. So yeah, that's the one part. So, and then if you don't want to double click on that, back to the money question. So I'm not forgetting to answer this. As I said, we focused very, very strongly on the product building. We started in 16, 17 with experimenting with advertising and recruiting products. And we knew these are revenue streams which will be only for some time. And we will continue to doing them. But we use those revenue streams, in all honesty, retrospectively, if I reflect on it, to turn ReaearchGate from a purely product organization to a real business. Because also this is a very, very tough transition, not only changing the leadership team, but also turning a product-only company where no one cares about how you want to monetize this thing and how you want to make money, to a company where it matters, and where you have to balance these two things: value for the user and value for the customer. And in a great organization, these two things are exactly the same. Let's put it that way. They're influencing each other in a way that if the one thing goes up, the other one thing goes also up to some degree. But obviously we got some headwind in 16, 17 through the publishing industry, when the scientific publishers more or less started to look at ReaearchGate deeper. And, as everyone know, or you don't know, but we got then also sued by Elsevier and ACS, representing a larger group of publishers, both in Munich and then a year later also in Washington. for a couple of 100 million in damages. And obviously also this is a very tough situation as a team, as a company. Are you continuing? And how do you work as a company, as a team? Because this is then a marathon, which you're now going. You have to transform the organization. You're being threatened by outside, and you have to turn this into a functioning business, which is paying the bills on its own and not continuously raising all the time. So it was a very, very tough time, but it really helped us as an organization to grow and mature. And we went profitable we became profitable with our advertising model. We are now the trusted partner of many, many publishers. The lawsuit is still ongoing. I hope that this is going to be resolved one day. Because I think we all need to work together in order to make it better for researchers in the world, to have the next big breakthrough, which all benefits all of us. And also the team has transformed successfully. So a lot of things came together in the last years, which is now also putting us into a position to think also differently about the revenue generation and also about what's the monetization strategy. Is advertising really the monetization strategy we should follow? No. Again, give you a very clear answer. It's a no. It was a stopgap solution. It was a solution which really helped us to transform the organization, both on the leadership, but also conceptually and mentally. But obviously, if you think about, you have the scientists of the world in one network, and now you monetize, like very innovative, and now using advertising to make money with it, which is the least innovative thing you can do. Again, I would do it almost the same again. If I would do it, not 100% as always, then you would have learned anything. But it was a good path to do that. But now we are transforming it into more a SaaS business. We see that the interactions happening on ReaearchGate, there are more players in the industry who want to be part of that network, not only researchers, publishers, scientific conferences, universities, societies, corporates, governments, funding agencies. Like I could go on for long, right? And they want to be part of that network and they want to be distributing the content, the knowledge they have into the network and interact with that community, very high level. And we can give them a path towards that, and we can create and turn ReaearchGate. That is the next transformation. Turn ReaearchGate from a pure network for researchers into a platform where a lot of players are part of. And that has started a year and a half ago, and has been going very, very well. So, yeah.
Exciting. I mean, thank you for sharing. And you were right. I didn't know about the lawsuit. But thank you for sharing it. I think it also sounds extremely tough and complicated, as lawsuits always are. But when the bigger they get, I guess the more complicated they become, and the tougher it is on the companies and people involved. So, and it also sounds like you said it was sort of trial by fire making moment for your team and the company, and it sounds like you guys have come through, which is great, and hopefully the lawsuit also goes away at some point soon for all of us, for all our sakes, because like you said, the world doesn't need something like that, right? So talking about the future and talking about what you guys have been doing over the last, like you said, a couple of years, the new monetization models, I think I would like to touch on that a lot, because me as an entrepreneur, I'm also thinking about because this is a new community for me, but I'm very interested in it and I want to help it. So I'm just wondering how, I'm sure ReaearchGate has seen competition over the last few years, right? And how do you see competition now and going forward? Clearly, you are the big whale in this category, if you want to call it that. But yeah, just if there's any words on competition that you've faced and that you potentially think you will in the future, or you don't think about it, then it's fine. We can move on.
There's always competition. I usually don't spend that much time on looking at competitors, to no honesty. I don't know why. Maybe I'm too childish and not taking things too serious enough, and I should maybe take it more serious.
Well, I'm like that
Um,
too, so don't worry. So,
okay, okay, good. So I'm not the only one. Good. No, I usually don't look at competitors too much. I rather want to focus on what I think, we should change for the people we are serving, which are the researchers, and just purely focusing on it 100% of your time.
yeah,
And then you will make a difference or not. Um, but
yeah,
looking at competitors and see what they do, and
yeah,
yeah, it can inspire you a little bit here or there, but
yeah.
I never was a fan of that. I don't know
No,
why. Maybe it's a
no,
flavor thing. Maybe others are different. And
yeah. I get it. No, that's fair. And I think, and just maybe looking back on, what are the plans for ReaearchGate in the future? If whatever you can share, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, clearly you can, as you mentioned, you guys are focusing on becoming more of a SaaS player, and maybe there's some other things in there. Um, how do you see the future of scientific of like science in general? Big question, I know, but given your role in, let's say, modernizing it a lot more or bringing a lot more people connected online, how do you see the future, and what part do you think you'll play as ReaearchGate, and what part do you think is there for other startups that want to be part of the space? Because this is a entrepreneurial focused podcast, more or less. Not really, actually, but some entrepreneurs listen to this. But I think just, is there space for more players, new players that maybe are thinking about coming out in today to launch something? Just wanted to hear your thoughts in the future.
yeah, so for sure. So first of all, I think um, with ReaearchGate turning this into a platform, not only for the publishers, also other obviously customers, but also for the researchers themselves. If they want to build products and they want to distribute those products, it could be faster. We could have also faster progress if you have a platform in which you can distribute your work more efficient and more effective. Currently, even if 5 microbiologists are using a tool in Melbourne in Australia, no one will see them, and it's maybe pure luck that you will see. There's no like clear ways of marketing to market your product. So turning the ReaearchGate into the platform, which we all hope it will be, it can become more or less an operating system for science, and that's how I see that. If you ask me, long term. And being publisher agnostic, being customer agnostic, but just bringing the various players, the researchers with the publishers, with the conference organizers, with the universities, societies, companies who are producing the products the scientists using in the laboratories, the funding agencies who are providing the money, but also governments who are basing a lot of their decisions on research, like turning ReaearchGate into this platform with the researcher in the center of it, I think is the next 10 years. AI will play a significant role in this, in making AI and humans to great teams, creating great teams by combining these two. I don't believe that AI will, I believe is a strong word, but the highest value we'll get by integrating humans and AI into one functional team, and not thinking, oh, the AI will just do all the work for me. That's just not going to happen in the foreseeable future. But really making them to teams, creating teams as we're creating teams with humans. If you do research, but just adding another person, a non-human person, which is then AI, I think that will also will have play a significant role in advancing research. So this is what I'm looking at, and we look at. I think modernizing science will be depending on one player defining the operating system somehow, in which you can interact in the system as very simply. You don't want scientists to spend too much time on administrative work. I remember in my university, both in Harvard when I did research there, or in Germany and Medical School of Hanover, if I had a product which the university paid for, it was almost impossible for me to find it out, how to access it, how to use it. But that should be all easy. That should be just fast. That should be like all these basics should just work, and not requires you as a researcher to run around and try to fill in forms to get approval for a software, or a tool you want to use in your lab to do an experiment. I think there's a lot of opportunities for making things easier. But for that, you need something in the middle, and we want to be this in the middle, and enabling all the various players just to be better and faster in what they do. And this will enable then, in my opinion, also more innovation in that space longer term. If you read honestly, there's not so much innovation in science. Like, there are local innovations, but not conceptual global innovations. And I think that is, like, we are lacking an operating system in which any kind of innovation could spread fast, or could not even spread fast, could spread. Let's leave out the fast for now. Just could spread at all. And I think this is where I want to see our company to become a significant part of that operating system in the future.
That's great. Moving on to sort of your personal journey a little bit, because starting the company, being one of the founders, and over the last 15 years, I'm guessing your role has transformed quite a bit. What did you think it was going to be 15 years ago? and what has it been actually over the last 15 years as your personal role as CEO and co-founder of ReaearchGate?
I think I didn't think that much 15 years ago. I was just doing what needed to be done. I remember a very famous VC asked me in 2015, do you want to be a CEO, or do you want to be your VP of product? And at the time, I didn't understand that question. I was thinking, what the fuck? Why is that person asking me that question? And that was the journey, my personal journey, to start to rethink the role I play in my organization. I was way too much in details, way too much deciding in every area of the product, of the engineering, or of wherever, what needs to be built and why is it built. And this has changed, of course. My people reporting into me is also finance, sales, legal, marketing. Like, you have things which weren't very familiar. You weren't familiar with when you started when I started ReaearchGate, but now I am, and I understand why I need them to be as positive, as successful as I can as a CEO within ReaearchGate. But what hasn't changed is being close to the product. That never changed. I just had yesterday a design review where I still look at the product and I still look at the next big thing we're building. We're building right now a different feed, like a feed experience, a discovery experience. A very strong focus this year is how do you discover content through social connections. So we're adding a lot of social features, which I was withholding for a very, very long time. Because I didn't want what happens with LinkedIn now, in all honesty. It becomes a platform where everyone is sharing their wisdoms, which aren't wisdoms, which you can just read in all the books that have been written 100 times already. And I don't want that ReaearchGate becomes this. I think it's just an Instagram for business, which LinkedIn became. And it's awful. It's really bad. I cannot look at it anymore, to be honest. And this is why I was withholding for a very, very long time social features in ReaearchGate. But now we're building them, and now we have to be deliberate and smart in how we're designing those features, that it's not ending up in a, I don't know what the word is, but in
a podium for emotional outrage. I don't know.
Yes, whatever. Exactly. Podium for representation of your research wisdoms.
Yeah, that's a good word.
So what I want is productive conversations about research. I want people to say, look, I looked at this, it didn't work, or I looked at this and I'm not sure if I did it right. Like, that is what I want. Or I read this paper, it didn't help me because of X, Y, Z. So I really want that. And I don't know if we will succeed in designing, but that's our goal. So yeah,
that's an amazing goal, and I think there's there's so much. I mean, if you just I follow a few tech leaders as well, and some people that I know personally, some that I don't. And I think if there's one thread through all sort of the most successful entrepreneurs in the tech world, or VCs, or anyone whose name is very popular, they all have a endearing love for a handful of scientists, like Oppenheimer. Take it, whatever, if you like him or don't like him. There's of course Newton and like Einstein, all these sort of big names that sort of everyone's like, oh, they did great things. I'm like, there's scientists today doing great things, for sure. There must be, right? And I think it's just like, I don't know if our zeitgeist or society is sort of focused on mostly on wealth and mostly on sort of that being the only measure of success, right? And all the media is obsessed only with the numbers, right? And that I feel sometimes that I think I one of the reasons sort of I'm very interested in this space and hope to build up some product that can also help in some way, but more from the outside perspective, not because the research is such a big such a big hornet's nest, right? There's so many details that go into it. It's more just from the comprehensive side that I'm interested, because as a layman, as a everyday nerd, who reads things, who has some expertise, but who just wants to know what's going on, there's a huge demand for insights and knowledge. Then that has always been there, but I think now with hallucinations on AI, all these different things that are coming about, I think people are realizing actually we need science more than ever. We need scientists, to do great things to get us out of problems, and I think it's a good time to build exciting things. So yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing what you guys do and following along closely. So it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I think we can go on for probably a little longer, but I think I'll ask the last couple of questions to wrap, just so you have some time as well in the day.
Thank you.
I think I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm an entrepreneur myself, so I have my own story or my own answer for the question I'm going to ask you. But you touched on it a couple of times, sort of the personal sort of emotions with entrepreneurship, right? That's one question, and one question is about building companies in Europe. We'll talk about both. So the personal emotional part. How do you develop resilience as a founder? How did you do it, and what would your recommendation be to entrepreneurs?
Again, second question, which is where I need to think for a second.
That's why that's why it's a long show. Like, that's why there's no editing. It's raw. Like, because I'm hoping I can ask some interesting questions once in a while.
No,
So
it's a good one.
take your time.
There's some research showing that some resilience is inherited. So some part of the resilience behavior you have is just part of what you are, and then there's parts which you can develop, which is the majority. What I have seen in my life is always it's people around you who help you to be resilient. It's not just you; it's more the people around you. It's your friends, it's the family, but then it's also the colleagues, the co-founders. There's always, I have that there are situations where I remember my co-founders are the better person to handle a particular situation, which don't stress them out. But then there are situations which then I can handle better, which don't stress me out to handle. And I think this is how you develop resilience, is by understanding your own limitations and going in the right moment to those people who can take away the fear to failure or the fear of not moving. And that is how I created, or over time, even more resilience, is by just understanding your own limitations. That is to that question. Yeah.
That's so great, because I think it's a similar answer that I have, right? I think at the end of the day, if you get hit enough in the face, you realize, okay, there's limitations. I need to look at myself in the mirror and be honest. And everyone has, different emotional triggers, or different, as you said, situations when they are suited or not suited. But you have to do things. Like, there's a role to play, and if you can get support in whatever way makes sense for you, you should. And for all the what did you call it? Wisdom on LinkedIn. You know, there's a lot of. I agree with you very much. So, like, I kind of just opened LinkedIn one day, and I'm like, what's happening here? It's like a worse version of Facebook and Instagram. You know what's happening. But the good thing is that there are certain conversations that were not as open before that maybe are open all the time now, right? And and I think that's also maybe a little overcorrection sometimes. But I think the good thing is that people need to talk about these things sometimes, right? And I think everyone has their own style and flavor, but yeah, you should figure out what works for you. Talking about style and flavor, I've seen you on a lot of stages online and at different conferences, and you always have a very similar look. What's up with the Superman hat? Is there like a story behind it? Because I've seen you wear the Superman hat a bunch of different places. This is a new one I haven't seen anywhere else yet, on publicly. I mean, but
Yeah.
is there a reason or story behind it, or is it just like you just like it and you don't care? I'm just wondering. Like,
That's a good question. I don't like Superman as a hero, to all honesty. It started with one Superman hat that someone, like my ex-girlfriend, gave me as a present, and I started wearing it here or there. But and then I started to like it, and then I started to buy different ones. And it's more like I don't have any hair anymore on my head, and in the winter it's cold, so I was thinking, okay, what do I wear? And I was wearing these, and then I realized, a hat is sometimes better. It's easier to use, so that was the reason. Very functional, but then also it's the one element which I can be a child in, and that's why I continue to wear it and to show that life shouldn't be so serious as most people think it should be.
yeah, I agree, and I think there was a photo of you, I think, with Angela Merkel and a few other people, like, and it's like everyone is dressed in like suits, and you're wearing like the penultimate sort of, startup uniform, but you actually go even further with the hat, and it's like, and I was like, okay, I have to talk to this guy, like, clearly, he doesn't mind being a little different and being person like himself, right? That's what you're saying. At the end of the day,
Absolutely.
it's okay. Like if you can't deal with me, then okay, well, then it's about the function, not the form always. Um,
100%. Yeah.
maybe the last question, if unless we get on a tangent, there's of course, you're based in Berlin. You've raised money from very famous foundations, investors, a variety of people that are very public that you can find out if you want to. Um, how hard has it been starting a company in Europe and staying in Europe? And you've done it, maybe I would say, over like a down and a hype cycle. Like you sort of have seen one or two cycles, within the last 15 years. What have you seen transpire around you? And yeah, just talk about building a global startup from Europe. What does that mean to you, and what have been the positives and negatives?
So I think um, we're underestimating in Europe how much knowledge the Valley and also East Coast have, because they have built these companies decades before we built any great companies in tech. We're underestimating that still. And this is, and China is also is now another player, but if you look, and then very simply, I put that also to my employees again and again. Do you want to do something is one thing. Do you know how to do it is a totally different thing. And in entrepreneurship, you are underestimating the operational side of things hugely, very often. And it's being seen as something you will just figure out on the go. But in all honesty, it's the thing to figure out on the go. It's like the thing you have to be like almost, don't stop. This is the magic formula, is getting it done in a way that doesn't break things. It doesn't break people. It doesn't break systems. Sometimes you have to break the systems in order to get, but how are you doing it? The operational side of things is in my opinion, the magic part of building companies long
And
term.
you mean that there's just a lot more people who have built the kinds of companies,
Absolutely.
internet startups in East Coast and the West Coast that there's just a lot
Absolutely.
more of them who have,
Absolutely.
yeah, and
Very, yes, exactly. And this is, I was lucky enough to build a company which went through a exponential growth curve at one point in time, where we were like blindsided by the growth. And I can, also obviously Matt helped me to get the right tooling in place, the right tracking in place. But if I look at companies, if I work with founders now, it's like if you never tasted the taste salt or sugar or whatever you want, you don't know what you taste when you're seeing it for the first time. But if you see it again, you know, that's sugar or that's salt. And this is what these people have experienced before. They were in those situations. They saw how companies grow and what is key in those situations, what you need to do, what you have to pay attention to, who do you have to hire, what are the functions you have to work on, how do you structure your meetings, how do you structure the check-ins, how do you structure the operational cadence of success. It's so many things, which is, in my opinion, no one almost talks about that. Most people talk about, there's a founder, MagicP talks about an idea, and then these things become the company. That's not the truth, right? Like, this is also why so many companies fail, because of their underestimating and underestimating or wrongly estimate how important it is to operationally successfully build a company. And I just remember, I think that's one of the biggest aha moments in my life when Ralf, one of my current board members, joined the board. The one thing he said to me very early, Ijad, you don't need visionaries around you. You need operational excellent people around you. And we all know we always hire alike people. We like things which are which are like us. That's the way we operate as humans. And then this changed me. It changed me, like, okay, wait, is that the truth? And then I started to analyze who are the people I work with, and I enjoy working with them. And then I started to look at that closer, and those were operational, very excellent people, which I would not count myself in. And now if you look at my team, they are all operational, excellent people, all of them.
And what is the difference between you and them? Like, what do you mean operational excellence? Like, what are the what do you mean?
I mean, I give an example. So if you have a product you want to build, how do you get the product from first idea to that it's being live? And it's easy if you're like 5 or 6, 7 people. You just go into a room and shout out, I want to build a product. Let's just figure out to do this. And all the other priorities are not important for now. That's easy. If you have 200 people, even before 200, if you have 50 or 60 people, that's not that easy anymore, right? People are on vacation, people have priorities, people have things they have to do. So many things that the way you disrupt your own organization has to be very, very deliberate. So you cannot just always go in and say, okay, now everyone's not doing anything, and we just do this now. That's not good. That's going to work one time every 2 or 3 years, but not constantly. And having a team around you who understand how to bring ideas into production, this is, for me, operation excellence. And this can be people, this can be finance, this can be legal, this can be product, like everywhere. And that is what, for sure, I would not say I'm the best. I'm the CEO. This makes things a lot fucking easier, right? That's my operation excellence, is being a CEO and just say, I think we should do this. Then everyone is okay. Let's figure out, maybe we should do it. And everyone looks at the idea. But that is, as I said, that works once every 3, 4 years. And if you do this too often, that's just not working, because you're destroying the company. It needs to be, yeah.
That's another like very interesting thing you just said, right? Because I think as I've been a CEO before, I'm starting a new company soon. I will also be CEO of that, hopefully, right? And or whatever, whatever that means. And I think you're right. Like sometimes it's like, oh, the job is to come up with these visionary ideas, but like I think you said something interesting just now. It's like if you do it too many times, you break the company, right?
For sure. You have to hold that's the most important thing. Make a decision and hold on this decision. Get it, like, execute on this, and don't flip flop all the time. It's not your, as a CEO, And this is, if people say, oh, small companies, they're more agile, they're doing things more often, this is the advantage they have. If I look at when we started ReaearchGate, why we need to flip flop is because we didn't know shit. Like that's what the reason why we need to do flip flop. This is why we worked maybe a couple of hours more on average than others, and had a smaller team, and we're able to test things faster than others. But did we really test them to the end, like really end to the end, like really, really understanding them? I don't think so. And now it's about, in my opinion, as a leadership team, making great decisions, understanding them, and holding on and helping the team around you to focus. And that starts, in my opinion, with communication. That's the first basis of focus. Is focus also the way you talk, the way you tell the people what you're telling them, and what you're discussing in your one-to-ones with them. If you're already flip-flopping there, that where already the distraction starts to happen, and where people start to do 6 things, 3 things, 5 things. If you would tell me the one thing I would do differently in the last 15 years, I would hold on way stronger on the things which have been already successful, and continue to squeeze them and work on those even more, and not just go into the next thing.
But by that, you mean, just to understand what you're saying, you mean if you had an idea, it executed to a certain extent, to not say, oh, let's move on to the next idea, to say, let's really take this all the way to
all the
the
way.
100%, not stop at 20,
Yes.
30 or 40, not stop at the first exponential growth.
Not even start at, exactly, not even start at 60 or not at 70, just continue. Get to the 80, 85, 86, 87, and make this better and better and better.
And what is the emotional feeling of getting to 87, 88 that you didn't get to, or many of us don't get to and want to escape? Is that the boring operational stuff? What is that? What is that?
Even if, just observe yourself. If you're listening to someone, you have tons of other things coming into your mind all the time. Like this, I could do this, I could do that. And that's the way we work as well, right? It's very, very hard for humans to hold focus, on one thing. And I have seen now, focusing teams, focusing people, you will get the best results. And the decision, as a manager or CEO or whatever you are, your magic should be to make one decision. Exactly. And then focus. No one wants to work for someone who is just jumping around every 20 minutes. And then hold that decision, hold on this, and use the one-to-ones with your reports and the people you work with to chew on it, to get more out of it, to think about this even more, and how could this evolve to something different, and not building something in parallel to it, to this. And I think that is the most important thing, focus. And I learned this every year new, what focus means. It never stops. It's just getting clearer and clearer what the word focus means, for me and our organization.
I think that's the best place to end it. Thank you so much for your time, Iyad, and really appreciate you being honest and open and candid about also some stuff which I'm sure was very difficult, to share. Maybe not to share, but very difficult to experience. Thank you for doing that. And hope you had fun.
Thank you.
Hope you had a good time.
I had fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Most welcome.